All right, I got a very serious question. I've been wanting to ask this question for the time that okay. I have this little doll that you made. It's probably about that big.
Mm-hmm.
That little doll is holding a basket. Did you make the basket?
No. I did not make the basket. No. However,
blown.
it's handmade.
It is
It's
handmade.
but I did not make.
Who made the basket? I
Look.
collect miniature baskets, and that's the only reason I bought this little doll.
I don't know.
Oh. And I'm telling you, the basket is that big.
Yeah,
It's smaller than
I
a
know.
penny.
I know it. I brought maybe 3 or 4 of those tiny baskets somewhere. May have been in West Virginia.
I mean, it's the smallest basket, and I'm a basket aficionado. Oh, really?
Yes, sir.
It is. It's not necessarily an old basket, but it is one of the smallest baskets I've ever seen in my life.
Yes.
And when I say the entire basket is smaller than a penny, I'm being serious.
Whoever made that basket probably wove it around a finger.
Wow.
Because yes, I remember those baskets, and I remember buying them and thinking, I love these baskets, and I'm going to use them with the dolls. Because I buy things randomly that might work with those dolls.
I got you.
Because that is the part of my work that is probably maybe misunderstood and strange.
Right.
However, so what?
It's the art. It is
And it speaks of my heritage. My mama was Cherokee Indian and Melungeon.
Okay.
And my daddy was German and Cherokee. So I still follow a lot of the traditional things. I know how to gather herbs. I know how to gather roots. It didn't do me one bit of good in September when I had a heart attack, though. So, but however, I have spent most of my life dealing with things in the natural world. As a child, I lived outside of a little town called Fairburn in a Cedar Grove community in Georgia, and we lived on a farm. And almost every day that the weather permitted, we were in the woods, my sisters and I. And my brother was a lot younger than me, so he didn't get that kind of raising because my daddy changed professions after he saw 2 men fall off of a skyscraper in Atlanta when he was a plumber and a pipe fitter. And after that incident, he took a job in North Atlanta, which was the wealthiest section of Atlanta, and moved us there. And I cried the whole summer. I didn't want to leave that farm. It just broke my heart. I begged him to give me some land, and my daddy said, "You are 16 years old. What are you going to do with land?" And I said, "I'm going to live here." And he said, "No, ma'am, you're not." So being an obedient Southern girl, I did what my daddy told me. And we moved that summer, but the first time in my life, I remember telling my parents that I could not do something. I told them I cannot go to one of those city high schools. I can't do it. I got to go back where I know the people, where I know what they're like. And they said, okay. My daddy said, well, Miss, if you find a way to do that, you let me know. I found a way. I looked at the bus schedules from North Atlanta all the way back to Fairburn, and every morning I'd get up at 5 o'clock.
Oh, wow.
And ride a bus from Buckhead to downtown Atlanta, and then from downtown Atlanta to Fairburn. And every evening after I got out of school, I'd do the same thing. I did that for 2 years.
Wow.
I am a stubborn human being.
Sounds like it.
Maybe let's reclassify. Perhaps I am a determined human being.
There we go. I like determined better than stubborn.
I do too, but I can be stubborn. So you can ask my husband. But
well, I got introduced to you at the very conception of this auction, of Ledbetter Folk Art Auction, because my friend Ron Causey
Yeah,
who
yeah.
you said you remember
I know.
had so much of your work. So
Yes.
some of the very first pieces I sold in my very first auction
Mm-hmm.
were from you.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a dealer
Uh-huh.
of sorts, so
Mm-hmm.
he had quite a bit of your work.
Mm-hmm.
And then every collection that we go into, because we get phone calls and they say, "Hey, my aunt collected folk art. I think this is folk art." Where you look at people, we go into the collection and we take a couple hundred pieces, and they always have a piece of Cher Shaffer.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, we just sold some, and that's what brings you here.
Mm-hmm.
Because did you buy one
Mm-hmm.
back?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
And you're gonna pick it up today, and then that's why we were like, man, if you're gonna come Friday, you've got to do the podcast with us. So it's a real special treat to have you here,
Thank you.
not only as a guest on the podcast, but you are an artist, and you're a living artist, and you're still creating, right?
Every single day.
And
Every day.
and we always on this show, we always talk about these artists. They had a lot of them are passed away, so we talk about them in the past tense.
Mm-hmm.
When we say these artists, they had the urge to create. They just had to.
Mm-hmm.
But you can tell us about that. You have the urge to create.
I absolutely have the urge, and there is not one single day that goes by that I am not thankful that I was given the ability to create. I was raised very simply. The first things that I ever used to create with were sticks and mud, and I still use things that are made with sticks and mud. Just a little bit different now, because my my growing up days, we didn't have much money, but I didn't really understand or know anything about that.
Right.
Because I was able to create
Can I
things.
hold that while you do?
Yes, you can. I was able to create things for myself and my siblings, because I was the oldest. And we would make playhouses and tree houses, and then we would make dolls and dishes. And a lot of the things that we did, I did not realize, but now I do, being older and having had more experience in life, that a lot of the things we did were very traditional objects, because Native children had to work with what they had.
Right.
And when I was a little girl, one of our jobs, because I learned to work very young, and my sister and I, we didn't have any trash pickup in Fairburn where I lived, so we would have to take the trash down, and we would put it in a ditch and burn it.
Right.
And we had a really, really good clay vein next to the creek that we had dug into and learned to shape things. Nobody taught us. We just fooled around with it. And we learned to shape things. And one day, I don't know why exactly, but I set a little bowl that I had made near the fire and realized that dried it out and made it a little harder. And so I went a little further the next time and put it into the fire. It blew up. That taught me a lesson too. But
So you didn't even know you were making pottery.
I had no concept.
Yeah.
But later on, this is a traditional pit fire piece, and as is this doll. This is all pit fired.
Right.
And I learned to pit fire, and that pottery really probably was my first way of expressing creativity.
That young.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And my mother was very, very intrigued by what I did, and would ask me, how did you know how to do that? And I said, I just thought I could. And that's been my entire life. I just thought I could.
Right.
Because I am totally self-taught. And my mother, we'd go out in the morning after we had breakfast, and we would play in the woods, and then in the evenings we'd come in. We'd come back for a sandwich at lunch, and then we'd go back and play again. we'd do our chores, but then we'd go back and play again. Well, one day, I don't know why, but I got the idea to make a large piece. And my sister and I, we were skinny little girls, and we weren't real strong, but we made a sled out of a piece of tin that we found in a ditch from our trash fires, put a rope on it, and so we drug probably 20 pounds of clay up out of the creek bed, and I made a groundhog. Now, in Georgia where I live, we didn't have a lot of groundhogs. I had seen them, but we didn't have a lot of them. And so I made this big groundhog, and of course I wanted my mother to see it. So we drug that sled with that groundhog up the pathway and up through the barnyard into the backyard. And I called my mother out and I said, "Mama, look what I made." And she said, "Oh, it's a beautiful thing." She said, "How did you know how to do that?" And I said, "I just thought I could." And she said, "Okay." She said, "But you haven't seen very many groundhogs." I said, "I have, because I haven't seen them in books, because I read a lot as a little kid."
Right.
Well, in Georgia, we classified storms. And there was a storm that was called a frog strangler. And that was one that would literally wash the gullies free of anything that was in them. And Mama had told me earlier, she said, put that clay thing, she didn't call it a groundhog, put that clay thing under the forsythia bush so it'll be safe. And I did. Well, that night we had a frog strangler.
Mm.
And the next morning after breakfast, Arlene, my sister, and I went outside, and I went around to see my groundhog, and it was melted down,
Oh.
as clay will do if it's not fired.
Right.
And so I started screaming and crying and carrying on, and Mama came out. She thought I had gotten hurt, and she said, "Cheryl Ann, what is wrong with you?" I said, "My groundhog melted down, Mama." And she looked at it. She said, "Oh, honey," she said, "I'm so sorry." She said, "It was a beautiful thing." But she said, "How did it make you feel when you made it?" And I said, "It made me feel real good." She said, "That's the most important thing about making anything."
There you go.
That was a life lesson.
Yeah. Sounds like it.
And I went through and learned to paint and draw, but I was never able to copy anything. So a lot of the kids that were in school with me, we loved horses. And they'd see these big, beautiful pictures of horses, and they would copy the pictures of horses. I could never do that.
Right.
My mind will break things down into shapes. And quite literally, most of the time, and this is I don't know how it came about, but it did. I can look at a blank piece of paper or a blank canvas, and I will start to see shapes emerge. And I follow the lines. Now, we brought a painting that is what I call one of my visionary paintings, because when I first started to do that, I was scared of it. I was real scared. My daddy was a Baptist deacon, and while the religion may not have taken completely on me, I went to church when I was a kid. And things that were unknown or things that were mystical were classified in a whole different way than they are in my life now. They were taboo. They were of the devil. And I have learned there is nothing about the devil that I do. It all comes straight from the Creator. And it's a gift.
Right.
And I honor it.
So when did you start making the vision paintings, visionary?
All right. I had an incident. Okay, I have 3 children. My 3 children were all young. And I, at that point, already had a pretty active career in art. And I was doing big paintings of simple things. They were good. But I had a woman in West Virginia that wrote a book, her and her husband, Oh Appalachia. Well, I met her probably 4 years prior to that book being written. And she would come and buy paintings from me. And at that point, I didn't have to have money because my husband was okay and he had a business. He was a produce broker, and that's a lot like a stockbroker. Just dealing in vegetables and not properties and money.
Right.
But I still maintained a pretty heavy work schedule with 3 young children, a husband that had an office at home and was fairly demanding, and then creating my art. Because once I learned that creating starts somewhere outside of the mind, it enters in, goes straight from your gut to your heart. And once I learned how that feeling affected me, I wanted to create all the time, and did pretty much. Any spare time I had, when my kids went down for a nap, I would go downstairs to a basement studio and work. When they went to bed at night, I would do that. Sometimes I'd work till 2:00 at night, get up at 6:00 morning, start my routine again. You don't do that for a whole long time without your body saying, "Whoa, this is time for you to put the brakes on." And my heart stopped. I was clinically passed on for a minute and a half. And when I came back from that illness, which at the point there was no logical reason for it except that I had depleted every electrolyte in my body.
Now, when was this?
1985.
Okay.
1985. When I came back from that incident, I created a group of dolls first because I couldn't stand up to paint, and I like to stand up to paint. If I'm painting big, I'm gonna be standing.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't stand up, so I created a group of dolls. I call them Oracles from the Fire. They're in a museum in Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
But I also started to see things differently. And I would look at a piece of paper, and instead of going to the things, the narrative landscapes that I had painted about where my mother was from and where I lived and that kind of stuff, I would see shapes just starting to come out and to form. And if I didn't follow them, they would disappear. So I started to do that. And I was following those shapes and those forms because I wanted to see what was behind that. Because one shape is, that's nothing. 40 shapes on a piece of paper, that's a lot.
Right.
So I started to follow that, and the first reaction that I got from the woman who was an agent, she had been selling to a lot of celebrities in Hollywood and celebrities in New York that were doing those programs during the day that lots of people like to sit and watch. And she said,
Soap operas.
soap operas. And she said, no, 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 you cannot do this. You must go back to what you were doing. And I thought, because this is what I'm seeing.
Right.
And an artist has to create what they see.
Right.
Or they are not being authentic.
Right.
And that's a big thing. Young artists I have seen through the years, I can recognize somebody's copy at 40 paces. And if a young artist is copying somebody and they ask me, what do you think about it? I'll say, it's a good copy of whatever. However, you do that as long as you need to do that. But as soon as you find your own voice, don't you ever do it again. Because that's your learning. But in order to have integrity, you have to do what's coming out of you.
Right. That's a really good lesson.
It is an important lesson, yes. Yes, it is. But 1985, I think I probably did my first visionary pieces. And I think the American Visionary Art Museum has a piece of my work. And I have been in several shows at the American Visionary Art Museum. I'm not sure that I understand everything that I paint, but I don't need to.
Right.
I'm only the voice.
But your dolls, they're inspired from your Native American
Absolutely.
heritage, right?
Absolutely. They absolutely are. And they have, they'll have beads and shells. And look here, this here is a holy stone. I found that.
Wow. How old is that? That's ancient.
It is. It is. It is. I'm always looking for things when I'm walking around, and Denny finds things for me now. My husband does find things for me, but I still have a love of beads, which I think is in the DNA. And I buy a lot of trade beads, a lot of handmade African beads and things like that I will use on dolls. Now this little guy right here, that's a mountain fairy, and it's not finished. It's been sitting in a basket for a couple of years. It hid for a while, couldn't find it. That happens a lot. And then I noticed it in a basket, and I thought, I'm going to finish that. And then I thought, no, not ready. But it has been out now. It's been out all winter, sitting near where I work. And I keep thinking, okay, when the weather turns good, when it gets warm, I'll start working on that. And this one will probably be a lot more whimsical. This one is a wampus cat. And the Cherokees have a legend about the wampus. And that's a wampus cat. This one is a guardian angel. And in July of this year, I don't know if this has got the date on it or not, no, this is 2024, but I started to do a whole lot of angels. And I would put bless your heart on them. Well, bless your heart is a southern thing that people say to you.
Bless your heart.
Yes, and sometimes it's not said in a real good way because my husband has reminded me that.
Well, bless your heart.
That's right. But I started doing a lot of angels and writing bless your heart on them. In September of this year, I had a heart attack and I had open heart surgery, a quadruple bypass.
Holy moly.
Yes, sir. I'm still standing.
Yeah, you are.
And because I got a lot of stuff to finish.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff to do. But it's funny how building up to that, I was doing those paintings of angels and bless your heart.
Yeah.
But I truly feel that we always have some kind of divine protection.
Yeah.
When we need it. Sometimes we don't get it because we ain't asking for it, or we don't know that it's there to ask for. I ask for it.
Right.
And I am blessed, I am protected, and I value the ability that I have. And I love passing it on. I love talking about it. But most of all, I love doing it.
Right. Yeah, I would think you're pretty prolific. Now, did you do Farrington last year?
I did not last year because I had a flu in January.
Okay.
And then after that, I had a whole year in 24. Somebody was trying to take me down. I had flu, and then I got bit by a brown recluse spider.
Oh.
Then I had to have surgery 8 weeks before my heart surgery. And I am not a good doctor person. I appreciate them,
Right.
but I don't use them a whole bunch.
Yeah, right.
And I had a hysterectomy. I have 3 children, and they were all big kids. I'm not a big woman, but that wrecked my body pretty good. And it only shows up later on.
Yeah.
And after that, I was sort of incapacitated for a little while, but I realized the value in September when I almost died. I realized the value of the people around me that I love.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that there were other people that don't have a joy inside of them to do anything. And I thought, okay, I still got work to do because I can pass this on to other people.
Right. Yeah, that's part of it too.
Yes, it
Because
is.
a lot of people don't know how to start. I want to be an artist, but what do I do?
I'll tell you what you do.
Tell us.
Right now,
We want to know.
you get a blank piece of paper or a blank canvas. You get some paint and a brush. It does not have to be the most expensive stuff. Walmart sells paint pretty cheap. And get yourself a brush. And then don't be all judgmental on yourself. Put 7 pieces, 7 strokes down on a piece of paper or on a canvas. Stand back and look at it. And you look at it until you start to see something. Maybe you've done something that looks like a tree. Maybe you've done something that looks like a dog or a cat or a bush or something. And then you walk away from it. And then you come back and you look at it again. And if you see something different that you can add to it, add to it. Most artists spend a lot of time agonizing. I don't agonize. I don't agonize at all. I know that when I put a stroke on a piece of paper or on a canvas, that it's going to turn into something. And I have that confidence and that faith. And even if it's not exactly what I start out to do, I don't care because it turns into something.
Right. Wow. I mean, I'm mind blown. Kyle, you catching any of this? I'm mind blown right now. Never heard it told like that, and that is it's instrumental the way you just said that, for sure. I like to copy Bill Traylor, I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, I love Bill Traylor. Love.
I've got like 2,000 pieces of cardboard that are like 8 by 10, and this guy was like, I got these too because he gave me a bunch of boxes. I was like, oh, I can use those, and my vision is but I did about 20, then I'm like, oh man, I don't want to do any more. So I got like 1,800 more sheets of paper.
Well, Jenny cuts cardboard for me, and I love painting on cardboard.
Yeah,
It's such a good surface.
it is.
And it's something that normally is disposed of and thrown away.
Yeah. So
But
it's like recycling.
it is. But
Talk to me about this face jug right here.
all right, look, it's got 2 face jugs.
I've been looking at. Oh my gosh, it's like an elephant man. I love that.
Well, that's the tiniest one I've ever done. I don't do.
And that's pit fired, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't do it. It's been fired in a kiln so that it wouldn't crumble up because pit fired stuff is it can be, and so has this been. Nope, that hadn't been.
So Georgia Blizzard, did she pit fire?
She did pit fire.
Yeah, I was about to say because I can see the resemblance.
She did, and the thing is, I have learned a technique because most pit fire, you don't get that slick. That has not got any kind of finish on it besides the fire.
Really? So you didn't paint it black?
No, absolutely not. That is the way it came out of it.
It came out nicely.
Yes, it came out of the fire. But I had a friend that was from Santa Clara, Pueblo, Art Tekeshe, and Art was a master potter. And Danny and I had a farm in Ohio, and Art stayed with us for about 6 months, right, Danny? About 6 months. And Art taught me the way that the Pueblo people pit fire. So, because up to that point, it just been like.
Now, what year was that? How long
That
ago
was
that?
probably, okay, so we moved to North Carolina in 2004. It's probably about 1998, 99. No. 2004. I'm going way back and way back. It's probably 2000.
Yeah, so 25 years ago.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Got it.
Long time ago. But up to that point, I had pit fired, but I would have more explosions than successes.
Right.
I probably wasn't wedging the clay. I probably wasn't letting it dry out enough and all kinds of things because I am not a potter.
Right.
I am a sculptor.
Right.
So, but Art showed me how the Pueblo people do their pit firings. Not that I followed it. I followed it as much as I could, but they use cow dung and stuff.
Yeah.
And we didn't have any cows. We had llamas, but I wasn't going to use the poop. Wasn't interested.
Right.
So, but I know now a method that to smoke things, if you want to get them really, really black and really, really hot, you build a fire. You let the fire die down. You put the pots on a rack. I don't put mine directly into the pit anymore. On a rack. And then you start putting in damp grass. Like from when you've mowed the lawn, put that damp grass in there, and that sucker will smoke like you. And there's a color of smoke you're looking for. It's yellow. And once you get that yellow smoke and you keep that rolling, that's got a certain heat to it, and it will fire those pieces. And you got to, 6, 7 hours you have to fool around with it, come back and forth, feeding it. And then you got to let it sit overnight. That's the worst thing for me because I want to just grab them out of there and look at it.
Right.
But you wait, and then you come back, and the next day, it's like a party. You got all that stuff, and you start moving the coals and moving the ash around, and it's like treasure.
Right. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is.
So just give me an estimate, and I know it's going to be hard. Maybe it's not going to be hard. How many pieces of art have you created?
Oh, good Lord. All right, I'll tell you a measure. This month, I've done 103.
Okay.
Now.
And that's everything from paintings to sculptures to just 103 pieces.
Mostly this month, it has been paintings, although yesterday I did one little charm, and I started on a doll. I carved too. I carved wood, and I have carved stone, but that's a little tough on my hands, so I don't do that anymore. But in my lifetime, tens of thousands of pieces, because for 55 years, being dedicated and working.
Yeah, that's 50,000 pieces.
That's a lot of pieces.
Yeah.
That's a lot of pieces.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, that's, we were talking earlier with Brian, and, of course, Howard Finster numbered his pieces, and he got up into like the 40,000s. So, potters, did you ever, you said you're not a potter, but you drew influence for Little Face Jugs. What potter influenced you? Or was it? Maybe it wasn't.
Well, no, I would say probably so. Matters. The Matters.
Yeah. You knew them down in Georgia?
I knew of them. When I was living in Georgia, I lived in Georgia until 1974. And then I moved to West Virginia, lived in West Virginia, and then lived in southeastern Ohio. And then Denny and I had been together for 30 years, and we moved to North Carolina in 2004. But I was always very intrigued by the face jugs because I loved the concept of what they were for to begin with, that they came from the African American culture and that they actually were used as grave markers. Now, I bet they had another purpose beyond that.
Right.
And I was intrigued by it. So I think the first one that I ever saw may have been in North Georgia, in Dahlonega. They used to, when I first started to show my art and sell pieces, the festivals were not the slick things they are now. You would go someplace and somebody'd have an old farm or something, and you'd set up out next to the buildings. Literally, I have hung my art on the side of an outhouse. And that's where the Medders came to a festival. I think it was in Brownsville, Georgia. And everybody, all the people were pretty much self-taught. There wasn't any, now I don't like to say educated artists because a lot of the academics.
Yeah.
They didn't do that. They didn't do this. This was stuff that were like all the aside from them.
Sure.
Um,
Self-taught.
yeah,
Yeah.
self-taught.
Folk
But
artists.
I was standing next to my display of little paintings, and I used to paint on boards from a barn. I would go out and gather the boards, cut them, and then I would paint on those boards to begin with. But the first thing I painted was stones from the rivers and creeks and the mountains in Georgia.
Right.
But I was standing there and I was talking to another artist. All of a sudden, everybody started running to the front of this farm and running. And I thought, what in the heavens is happening? And finally, somebody came by. I said, what's going on? They said, the Metters are coming with a wagon full of pots.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
And they pulled up with a truck with a wagon behind it full of hay. And there was all pots in there. And people were climbing all over that wagon, getting those. I wish I'd had enough sense then to get one of those pots.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Face jugs.
Face jugs.
Yeah.
They were face jugs.
Oh, yeah.
But that was probably the first ones that I saw.
Right.
And I began to ask questions to people that were potters. I said, what are those? And they told me, and I was very interested. Of course, then I began to read history of them. So
Yeah, they're very fascinating.